Welcome to the Adlerblick podcast, your eagle's view into the future, featuring visionary guests and hosted by Steffen Ehl.
Today's guest is Tod Bolsinger. Tod is a senior leader at Fuller Theological Seminary in California. He's a best-selling author and founder of his own company, A.E. Sloan Leadership. Tod, great to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And we are meeting in Dortmund, Germany.
Yes.
At the Leadership Conference.
Yes.
Your name, Bolsinger, sounds quite German to my ears.
It is German. And the last person in my family who was German about 200 years ago was the guy with the name. It shows German resilience is what I think about, because that's about how much German I am.
And it looks like being from South Germany.
Oh, it might, maybe so. I don't even know.
Yeah. And you're into Dortmund as soccer.
Yes.
How come Dortmund?
Because a lot of American players have played at Dortmund, and a lot of famous players have played at Dortmund.
Okay.
And
okay.
my family loves German football, and so we have been fans.
Yeah.
And the stadium is famous. So
Yeah.
I've always wanted to go.
It is famous all over the place.
Yeah.
So you wrote a book on adaptive leadership, especially for Christians, or with the Christian focus in it. What was the point that you thought it's important, it needs a book for that?
It was my own experience. So I was leading a church, and our church was doing well by most measures. All of the metrics were going up and to the right, as they say, like we were growing, but the morale was going down. The best leaders in my church, the people that I wanted to be on my leadership team and were pulling away, and I didn't know what to do about it. I was completely lost. And we had a group come in and do some work and some assessment, and what they said was, your church is doing well, people are happy, but everybody thinks it's about you. And I got sick to my stomach. I was like, I didn't want to make this about me, but I had, because the model of leadership that I had been trained in was that the strong leader sets the vision and people get committed to the person. And what I realized was, as the world was changing, really healthy people wanted to be part of something bigger than a personality. And I realized I had to learn how to lead differently. And that led me into this kind of leadership called adaptive leadership. Yeah. Where what you really are recognizing is that some problems can be solved by an expert, and if you do, that's good, and you build trust. But most transformation that you need has to happen through the moments when you don't have expertise, when you don't have best practices, when you have to learn your way forward, or you'll have to let go of something. And that started my own process, and I started doing work with pastors and then some schools, and I ended up being a senior administrator at a seminary, and started writing books, and now I have a consulting company that works on that issue.
Yeah. When this a consultant came in and said you might be part of it,
he said you were entirely part of it. Yeah.
But that's a bit unusual, because you're the one who pays them, right?
Right.
So usually they will find a lot of reasons, but not the one of who pays the bill at the end.
Yeah. It was remarkable, and I actually ended up going to work for them. They trained me, and I had a great experience with that little consulting company, because what they did is they helped me realize that it wasn't that I was trying to be a bad person or a narcissistic person. This is what I was trained to do. And at a moment of crisis, you do not rise to the occasion, you default to your training, is one of the things they teach you in places like the military. I was trained to make leadership about me. And so that means I needed a new way of learning to lead. And that's what adaptive leadership was. It was my learning a new way of leading. Leading when you don't have best practices, when your old ways, when what got you here won't take you there, when your old ways won't take you forward. And that's the entire metaphor of canoeing the mountains. If you've gone on a river trip and you run out of water and you're facing mountains, you don't just keep paddling harder, or you don't go back because you want to keep paddling. You have to drop the canoes and learn your way forward into uncharted territory.
So for most, I would assume it is a process where it's difficult to find the right moment. So the metaphor you're bringing in with Lewis and Clark, who are on an expedition early 1800s and need to find a water route from the Pacific to the Atlantic, and they are stuck. There is no way forward, but find out that they need to climb the mountains, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. If everybody for 300 years assumed there was a water route that would connect all the way from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean, they just had to find it. For 300 years, there was an assumption about the geography. What they realized at that moment was the maps that they'd been given, maps that people had drawn assuming something, were wrong. And so the metaphor is that the world in front of you is different than the world behind you, and that we were trained for the world behind us, but we're going to have to let that go to keep moving forward. And we realize that's where every organization is today, especially Christian organizations. The world is changing rapidly, and we have to discern what of our past we're going to take with us and what we might have to let go. And that's very hard. It's very hard.
And it's also for, I can say for technology organizations, it's a huge problem with AI coming in.
Exactly.
In the past, we could always say, put more developers on a problem. And now that doesn't work anymore.
No.
We need different ways to do it.
Yeah, it's interesting. The tech world is a fascinating place where I have good conversations because the tech world has changed rapidly. Think about just how long ago, not very long ago, we were telling all young people, learn to code. You should learn to code.
Yeah.
Right? Now, we have apps that are doing it faster than humans ever will. So you realize it's changed. The world is changing so fast that the capacity to adapt wisely and well is the key to the future. And that takes both wisdom and courage. It takes capacity and humility, and it's very hard.
I mean, if we take Lewis and Clark, they were sitting in the canoes, getting to the, how do you say, to the source of the water. So there was no water anymore.
Yeah.
And they had to step out of the canoe.
Yep.
Yeah, there was no water anymore. But for most of us, I would think it is a slow process. The water is getting, there's less and less water. There is still possible to get for. But how do we find the moment of saying, get out of the canoe?
So one of the things when we do consulting, we have this model that we use for change. I do this because it's a sine curve, an S. The S curve of almost every organization looks like almost like a human life. Like you start, you grow, you peak, you fall. If you do nothing, a good company, good business, it will do this. A good church, it will do this. It will just eventually die. The person who did that work said the most important thing to recognize is that you can't do nothing and you can't go back. Once you start declining, if you try to go back, you'll decline even faster. The only thing you can do is start a new curve. But to start a new curve, the best time to start a new curve is yesterday.
Yeah.
And almost all of us want to wait and as long as we can and try to, you have to, because the first thing that happens when you start a new curve is it goes down. So if you're on the downward slope and you start something new and you run out of money or energy or it ends. So you have to start sooner. So a lot of our work, and we're sitting here at the Willow Conference, which has been a very successful group of people. I'm so thrilled that a conference like this, filled with many creative church people who are listening to a message like mine, because I'm saying you've been very successful over the last 30 years in many places where the church is not doing well, and you have to start changing now. If you wait, you'll become like the churches that sometimes we feel like they're ancient and they're dying.
So that means, do we need a better reflection to understand when is the point of getting out of the canoe? I mean, for a long time, it was good to be in the canoe.
Yeah, it was good. So I always say this, that one of the things, I was talking today to a church planter. So he's a young person, young in his 30s. His church is 4 years old. I said, the most important thing for you to recognize is that if you want your church to be here 100 years from now, it's going to well outlive you. You need to build into it today the capacity for it to change and adapt as you go. That's a capacity. We talk as our company, we say our company is we build adaptive capacity, which is the capacity to wisely adapt your core values to a changing world so your mission can thrive. So that capacity can start now, early. You can keep the canoes as long as you need them, but you're prepared to lose them. And that requires us to do some work. And we have a whole process that we take organizations through where they can start thinking about that. But the earlier you start building the capacity to adapt, the more that when the changes come, the less it bothers you.
So that means if we had the opportunity to give some advice to Lewis and Clark in the beginning before they started the expedition, it would be we expect you can go with the canoes down to the Pacific, but if not, be prepared for rethinking.
Yeah. So here's an interesting thing. They get to the top of this mountain, the Lemhi Pass. They look into the future and realize there's no water. Why didn't they go back? They were supposed to find a water route. The entire economics of the young United States of America was built on the fact that they would find this water route. Why didn't they go back and tell Thomas Jefferson, there's no water route. You need a better plan. Like, you told us to find a water route. There isn't one. So we came home. They didn't come back because they actually had a deeper value than the value of the economics of the country. The value was taught by Thomas Jefferson to Meriwether Lewis. It was an Enlightenment value. As Christians, we could have a great debate about whether it's the kind of value we would build our life on. But what they believed, their deepest value was the belief that the growth of human knowledge would lead to the growth of human happiness. So when Meriwether Lewis saw there was no water route, I think in that moment he thought Thomas Jefferson would tell me to keep going. The more we learn, the more every step that we experiment with, everything we explore, there's not going to be a water route, but we're going to learn about a whole new world. And so what you realize is you prepare people for the future by helping them get really clear on their values. Jim Collins and Jerry Porras, who have done some leadership work, write, once you're clear on what should never change, then you can be prepared to change everything else. And I think that conversation about never changing is a very important one.
Okay, but us sitting in the canoe, wouldn't they say what will never change is sitting in a canoe?
Well, so what you realize is that what they said was, no, what will never change is exploring, discovering. The core of discovery was about discovering more than a water route. That wasn't their official task. Their task was to find a water route, but they had a deeper value. And I think for many of us or say church leaders that we're with today, they had a vision to plant a church or to grow a church or to reach a neighborhood. They had a vision for what that church would look like. It probably did well. Well, the world changes. Sometimes our neighborhoods change, our community changes, the needs change. The people who started got older, and now we need a new generation that doesn't respond to this. So what's never going to change? Preserving the building? Preserving the initials on the door? What's the deeper value? And once you get people asking questions about the deepest values, and by values, I mean the actual values, not our aspirations, not what it should be, but what it actually is, well, then you can have these conversations about this is what we preserve, and this is what we adapt, and this is what we might have to discard. This might be a canoe that we're going to drop the canoe so we can keep exploring. It's a bad day for everybody who came on this trip as expert canoers. I mean, remember, they built their own expert water navigators. And all of a sudden they realized the very next day, they were just a bunch of guys who had to carry a bunch of luggage while they walked. It wasn't what they expected, but the deeper value of being about discovery became the important thing for them. And I think that's the conversation leaders have to have a lot, is what is our actual values? I think values are like the DNA of a person. It's like the DNA of an organization. What's our identity? Who are we about? What matters the most? What should never change? And then from there, go. And if you think about it, you see this a lot in a lot of technology. IBM, International Business Machines, doesn't make machines anymore. They're still about international business, but not about the machine. That's kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah. Didn't it need the crisis of seeing there is no water anymore to find those values?
Well, I think the crisis brought them to the surface. So I wrote a little book called How Not to Waste a Crisis. And in that little book, what we talk about is the crisis reveals both the underlying issues, the challenges that were there all the time that we haven't wanted to pay attention to. And it also brings up the questions that we have to ask in this crisis about thriving beyond it. Most of the time when people face a crisis, they want to just get out of it. How do we go back? How do we get back to where we did before? The crisis actually gives you an opportunity to learn your way forward if you don't waste it. And so that's one. So yes, the crisis of seeing the mountains changed Lewis and Clark, but they had to have those values deep within them as they began. And so what we say to leaders all the time is, we want to work with you on being able to get very clear on your values. A phrase we use with organizations is your charism. What is the unique gift that you do that is your gift to the world, your gift to your neighbor? What's the unique thing about your company, about your organization, that if you didn't preserve that, it might not be done in just the way you do it. That's who you are. That's your identity. I was very moved by an old rabbinic tale. Says that the old rabbis used to say, when God judges you, he will not ask you why you weren't Moses. He already had a Moses. He's going to ask you, why weren't you you? I made you. Why didn't you be you? And I think that we can ask that question about every company, every leader, every organization. The more we know who we are and our identity, what's the most important thing to us, and then the more we pay attention to the way the world has changed, and particularly the pain of the world. In a little book called Invest in Transformation, we lay out our process. Meets the pain point of the world, which requires our transformation. And there's a little process there that we've used with international organizations and small churches and tiny companies and big universities. Yeah, it's charism, pain point of the world, our transformation.
Yeah, that is I think, a very, very difficult and very helpful case when we find that there is a solution in the crisis.
Yeah.
That gives also hope. Yeah,
yep,
that
it does.
There is hope moving forward.
Yeah.
Sad. You said in the book that people don't resist change, but they resist loss.
Yeah. That's from Ronald Heifetz and Marty Linsky. They're the people behind adaptive leadership. I got to meet Marty, and I asked him, what's the most important thing that if I get to talk about your research with people? And he said, it's always about loss. And when you think about this, people don't resist change, they resist loss. What they resist is, I want the thing that is familiar. I want the thing that is comfortable. They famously said that leadership is disappointing people at a rate they can absorb.
Yeah.
Right?
Wonderful sentence.
And what's great about that is, why is leadership disappointing? Because leadership requires your transformation. And most of us want leaders to change our organizations so we don't have to change. And what it requires is us to change to accomplish the mission. And that change, it feels like loss. I'm losing, for me as a young pastor, I was losing the idea that I was the expert. I was losing the notion, the way I learned to lead, which was to cast a vision, inspire people. It had worked. Now it wasn't working in the same way. And I could probably keep going a bit longer. I could probably keep paddling the canoe longer. It would go fine for a while, but I knew that the world in front of me was different and I needed a different way of leading. And that feels like loss. And there's been lots of research on this. Daniel Kahneman won a Nobel Prize for looking at the fact that human beings are 3 times more likely to respond to loss and pain than they are to something good. Like 3 times more. We are way more sensitive about loss than we are about the possibilities for good. So what we have to do is learn to take people through those losses, accompany them, help them, be with them, empathize with them.
So a leader is a loss expert?
Yeah, you literally accompany people through loss is what you're doing, which is really hard because usually when you're the leader, they're mad at you because they thought your job was to keep them from the loss. And what you have to do is say, no, my job is to accompany us as we change and leave behind these things we have to leave behind. We're going to keep going together. And that's it's a skill set not many of us were taught how to do.
Leadership is disappointing own people at a rate they can absorb. So when I first read it, it really surprised me. But the more I thought about it, I thought there is a lot of wisdom in. Usually leaders get appointed or selected because they are, I don't know, bringing some harmony in a group. They they are accepted at this group, and now they need to do the opposite, right?
Yeah, so think of it. It's not necessarily doing the opposite, but it's not making that the point. Like if the point is the mission, if the point is for us to accomplish our mission and to accomplish our mission together, then the most important thing is not our comfort. So think about how a typical experience that I have in the United States is a church leader will come to us and say, our church is getting older. We would like to attract more younger people, more young families. So we're going to hire a young pastor. And they bring in the young pastor, and the pastor's got little kids, and they're all excited. And the young pastor comes in and says, okay, thank you. I'll be your pastor. We'll reach young families. If you want to reach people like me, here's how we're going to have to change. And they go, no. All we wanted to do is hire you.
Yeah.
We want you to bring them into our church. You attract them. And what we say is, they want the pastor to be the technical solution, to be the expert who solves the problem so they don't have to be transformed. And that's the disappointment. The disappointment isn't that they're not capable. They're capable. It's that it's going to require us to do something very uncomfortable. And you have to lead people through that process.
Yeah, it reminds me when I was hired for a specific job, and they asked me to change the organization. And even everyone in the organization said, we need to change ourselves. But when starting, they all said, not me personally, but
them.
The other department, they need to change.
Yeah. It's why one of the parts I've spent a lot of time on is what's the concept of sabotage. Sabotage comes from your own people. When you start to implement the changes, then you will get resistance. And you don't get the resistance until after you start to implement the changes. Ed Friedman, who writes about this, and I wrote a book, Tempered Resilience, about the resilience needed to lead through sabotage, he says that you make a change, then you survive the sabotage, and then you're successful. He says sabotage, where your own people turn on you, he thinks happens almost 100% of the time. So once you know that that's the process, that's normal, that it's to be expected. I tell people sabotage is not the bad things that evil people do. It is the human things that anxious people do. We're anxious because we don't want the loss. So we get mad and we sabotage and stop the very change we asked you to bring. And you wonder why we get stuck. And that's what you have to learn to lead people through.
In larger organizations, most management is somehow middle management.
Yes.
Having people above and people below us. And usually people above expect that there is not too much turmoil below.
Yes.
Do you have some advice how to manage this? That the idea is, yes, please change, but please keep also people calm? Yeah,
so what you're asking, I think, is it's the single biggest question we get asked by the people we work with. How do you change if you're not at the top of the organization? And the answer to that is you have to actually work both directions. So you have to disappoint your people above you at a rate they can absorb, which is, how do you do that? By being trustworthy. like by being somebody who is trustworthy, who tells the truth, who does demonstrate your technical competence, right? So we always say that every problem has either a technical problem or an adaptive challenge. Technical problems our expertise can solve. So everything the boss tells you to do that you can do well. You earn credibility, you earn trust. But if you can't solve the big problem with your technical expertise, then you need to start setting up the boss to have capacity to change. So it starts by, there's a lot of leading up, helping the management, the upper management, recognize the reality. You're the scout telling Meriwether Lewis, I'm ahead of you and I need you to know mountains are coming. And Meriwether Lewis in his head is thinking, I'm really good at mountains. I know what mountains look like. He's thinking about the rolling hills of Virginia, not big peaks that look like the Alps, right? He needs to see that for himself, but you begin to prepare them. So you start by leading up, you stay connected relationally, and then you are really consistent with the people below you. Like you literally empathize, help them adjust. And to be honest, you help deal with casualties. There are some people who won't make the change. They won't. I mean, the great story of the Exodus, every person who went through the Red Sea died in the wilderness. Israel made it to the promised land, not the individual people. The mission was for God's people, Israel, to go to the promised land. Moses didn't even make it to the promised land. And that capacity of helping is what if you're the leader, doesn't matter where you are in the organization, leadership is a function for that moment, which is about helping people go through transformation for the sake of a mission.
In sales, where I come from, it's usually measured in revenue or whatever. So there is some clearness here needs something to be changed.
Yeah.
And in Christian organization, in churches, it is sometimes a bit more complex.
Yes.
Because maybe it's not that easy to just look at numbers, or it is used as an excuse not to look at numbers.
Yeah. Yeah. I say that when we do our adaptive consulting, we always say your metrics are going to have to change, but we should change them last because we don't know the right metrics yet. If the number you used in the past got you to this result and it doesn't work anymore, you don't keep trying to do this. You've got to figure out what's going to create the future. So right now I'm working with a number of universities. A lot of them are Christian universities. Well, the demographics of the United States where I live are going down. Like the birth rate has gone down. There's going to be less college students and less seminary students. That we already know. And the church is in decline. There's less people going to seminary and to Christian schools. We know. So if you set a number that we need to make the budget, and that number is unrealistic, you're just paddling harder in a canoe that has no water. You're just exhausting yourself. But if instead you said, what is our mission? And our mission is about giving Christian education or developing pastors or developing Christian leaders. Well, great. What does that mission look like today in this context? Until we figure that out, we don't know what those numbers are. So a lot of places you have to realize is what we're doing is we're using old metrics to calm down our anxiety, even though they don't work anymore. And what we need to do is go through the changes, learn what we can, develop this new set of strategies going forward, and then have a new set of metrics.
And people who become pastors, usually, my experience, personal experience, like harmony.
Yeah.
And the idea of disappointing people is not, why they made it.
No, it's horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah, it's like
it's
so.
horrible.
Would you say they are in the wrong job, or
No, I would say you had the wrong expectation. Like it used to be not too long ago, most of us could remember that if a church was filled with peace and joyful people who loved each other and cared for each other and cared for their neighbors, the church would grow or it would be fine. It would minister to the neighborhood. Well, today, it's different than that. Almost every church is like a mission outpost. And what you have is people who are trying to use the old metrics, harmony. We love each other. We're a tight little family. That old metric no longer continues to sustain. That's going down the growth curve until you die. So what we have to say is one of the things that any of us who are called into any leadership have to grapple with is we can't lead with the way that we used to be able to lead. In business, it was command and control. It was built on industrial mindset and military, right? The org chart is straight. The person at the top gives the orders. Today, we know that businesses are fluid and people have different expectations and people come to businesses with different expectations. Younger generations don't have nearly the same sense of loyalty to a company because they have different values. That's just the world changing. So you can either adapt or you'll die. And most of us, the adaptation is very hard.
And if a pastor comes to you who is very uncomfortable with the idea of disappointing others, would you recommend change profession or?
Yeah. I had a pastor walk up to me and say, "You keep calling me a leader." I was in Scotland. "You keep calling me a leader."
Yeah.
I said, "Yes, I do. I think your job is to lead the people of God in your community." He said, "I'm a minister." I said, yeah, but ministry today, service, is leading a community to do what you can't do yourself. You're not just a priest. And if you want that, there's probably places where you can do that, chaplaincy work or some others. But leadership is leading a community of people to their own transformation for the sake of a mission. And so it may be that you're called to be a minister, but you may not be called to be a church minister. And that's very painful. It's very hard.
Leadership is disappointing own people at a rate they can absorb. If you find out they couldn't absorb anymore, it was too much. So you lose trust of your organization. So there was a lot of openness to change by the leader, but it was too much. The disappointment too big. What can a leader do to get them back?
Yeah. So there's two things at that moment. If you think about it this way, I think trust is like a bank account. If I want to do a big building project, as long as I have enough money in the bank, I can keep building.
Yeah.
But if I run out of all the money, the building stops.
Yeah.
But having a big bank account is not enough. Right? If a big bank account, if you don't invest it, it doesn't create transformation. So if you start investing and all of a sudden you realize that people can't take the pain, trust has gone down, then all you can do is rebuild the trust. And if it's not a moral thing, it's not that you squandered it, it's that it just needs to be refueled. Well, the way you refuel trust is through your own technical competence. So you do the things that you need to do. You hit the numbers, you preach the sermons, you care for the people, and you also build it with what we call relational congruence, which is you tell the truth in every situation. You're a person of character. So one of the things that we would do is say, we were not ready for change, but now if I'm going to stay as your leader, I have to get you ready for change. Because we are going to have to change. So I can give you an example from one of my clients. They let us talk about this. One of our big clients is the Wycliffe Bible translators. Beautiful ministry. The CEO came to us and said, "We're facing the set of mountains that's coming in front of us, and we need to change." I said, "What is the mountain?" They said, "We're going to finish the job. Bible translation is going to be finished by 2028. By 2028, every language in the world will have a Bible translation. By 2033, it'll be finished." They said, "We have to ask what's next."
That's a big question.
It's a big question, right?
Yeah.
And what was amazing about it is what he said, and this is an amazing leader. He said, "We're not even prepared to have that question yet. We need you to train us to prepare for that moment. And so as a company, we've been training their leaders 3 levels deep across the world on how to develop the capacity to look at that changing world and ask, what's the questions we should be asking? What's the mission that should be next? One of the obvious answers is we're done. We celebrate and we close the ministry. But there's another one, which is, well, what if we've learned something over 100 years of doing this work that could be of value to the church going forward? What could be our next contribution? And that's where we're helping them right now. We're in a process for the next 18 months, helping their leadership think about the future of Wycliffe Bible translators when there don't need to be any more Bible translation. It's one of the most inspiring and lovely stories going on in the church right now.
Wow. And I guess many organizations have to ask them very fundamental questions. And now, do you think this is more than 10 years ago, 20 years ago? Would your book be same important 20 years ago?
Well, Heifetz and Linsky, their work is 40 years old. So they've been talking about change for a while, back, 40 years ago, back to last century. I think it's sped up. I think what's happening is it's speeding up. And when I wrote Canoeing the Mountains, I wrote it 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, I wrote it about the big change that was happening in the world was the move from Christendom to post-Christendom, where there was the places where the church was thriving is where the culture supported Christianity. So say more in America than in Europe, for example. Well, people argued with me about that. They argued with me about Christendom. And then COVID hit. And now nobody argues with me that the world has changed. And now technology is speeding up. And you start realizing, the things that are changing rapidly are changing very rapidly. Today, I got asked a question about AI. I didn't know what AI is 18 months ago. And now our company is having to learn how to use AI wisely and well. And people ask me, what do you think? I said, I don't know. It's early. I don't know. That's moving really rapidly. And that's the skill set that leaders have to have. The world is going to change rapidly. So what are you clear about will never change? And then how can you begin to wisely ask, what do we preserve, never change? What do we adapt, discard? What do we let go? What's the canoe we drop?
We're speaking in a Christian context. And for Christians, it's also important to keep some values very high. We don't want to give up, even if the zeitgeist, the current timing sees things different. Isn't it difficult to distinguish what is a zeitgeist, what is a hype for now, and what is worth defending?
Yeah, I would say that my background is in Christian spiritual formation. That's my PhD is in the practice of the formation of the people of God to be like Christ. It's in spiritual formation. It's all built on the doctrine of the Trinity. It's how communities create people to be made into the likeness of Christ. It's formation. I say that because the part that is unique about Christianity is that it says our deepest understanding is that humans were made in the image of God and that we have a God who has told us what he wants for us. Now, we can disagree about a lot of things, but as soon as I say there's a God and my life is about fulfilling that God's mission for the world that he loves, now I've got to ask, what's the most important things? And it's interesting. There's some places in the scriptures where they talk about the most important things. Jesus was asked, what's the greatest commandment? And he gave 2, right? Love God with all your heart, which is the Shema, the single biggest, most important text in the Old Testament. And then he takes a little verse from Leviticus and he connects it to it. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's a disruption of the day. But it clarified, this is what's the most important. Paul says, the only thing that matters is faith expressing itself through love. So with a lot of our churches, we'll say to them, what's the single most important thing that if you let it go, you stopped being yourself? Are there 1, 2, 3? How many other things do we add? pretty soon the big challenge of discernment, that's the single spiritual practice. Discernment. What do we discern is the most important thing that's essential? And if it's not essential, is it expendable? What do we preserve? What do we adapt? What do we discard? That's the question every time. And almost when you realize it, you realize every decision you make as a company, as a team, you're asking that question all the time.
You asked us this morning why churches are afraid of the future.
Yeah.
And that's a very interesting question. Because you said we know where the future is going, and it is going in a positive direction at the end. What is your answer to it? Why are churches so much afraid?
Well, I think for one thing, we haven't read all of our Bibles. We haven't studied.
At least not to the end.
Yeah, we don't read to the end. I'm having this conversation with you in Germany. The greatest theologian of the future was a German theologian, Jürgen Moltmann, who talked about the fact that it is God's future calling us forward for the world that gives us hope. And I think many people in the church are afraid to take that seriously. What we know is the past. We know this. So it's very hard to say, okay, for the sake of the joy set before me, I will endure the cross, laying something down. I want to cling to what I know. I sometimes say it this way. In English, the root word for family and familiar is the same root word in English. It means that when people are asked to do something unfamiliar, like think about the future, they don't just feel disoriented, they feel unfamilied. They feel abandoned. They're like little kids who are afraid mom and dad have left. Like we get really anxious. And so partly what we have to do is create environments as leaders to help people with their anxiety, with their losses, as we start teaching them that the future in front of us is God's good future calling us forward. That's the question we have to keep asking is, do we believe that we have a God who is the Lord of the future, the same yesterday, today, and forever? All of those things we claim in our texts and in our hymns and our songs, when we've been there 10,000 years, right? We actually have to ask ourselves, do they make a difference to me today? And that's very hard. Most of us, it's easier to talk about the past or to fret about the future. There's a biblical passage in Isaiah where God says to the Israelites, do not remember the former things. All through the Bible, he's saying, remember, 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 remember what I did, remember. Here he says, do not remember. In the future, he's going to say, remember again. But here he says, do not remember. I'm doing a new thing. Do you not see it? And the answer is no, they can't see it because they're so stuck in the past or anxious about the present that they can't see that God is calling them forward into a new future. They can't see it. And so that's what we have. That's where our faith grows. That's what we have to disciple people and train people for. My next book is on the crisis of discipleship, and the fact that we haven't discipled people for a changing world, and that for organizations, we don't form our people for a future that is changing. We form them for the past.
We are now speaking in Germany. Not in German, but in Germany.
Really?
Next time, maybe in German.
Oh, I wish.
Yeah. Do you think the mountains for us in Germany, in Europe, are different mountains than in the US?
Well, I should ask you to answer that question. Like in one sense, what do you believe are the things in front of you that is causing you to have to stop and ask your deepest questions? What's brought you this far that you now realize, oh, we're going to have to change to go forward? Like, I think the mountains are different for everybody. The mountains are the way in which my experience of the world around me, the environment around me has changed. And so I have to change. So I'll give you one example and you can tell me if it fits. The most diverse zip code in the United States is a zip code in Queens, New York. I know this because I have clients in that zip code.
Mhm.
The second most diverse zip code is in Texas. Now, if anybody know anything about Texas, we think Texans are all the same, but
Mhm.
no, in Irving, Texas, by the Dallas airport, it's the second most diverse.
Mhm.
And one of our clients is a church there that said, our deepest value is that we're a church that wants to share the gospel with our neighbors. And they grew. They said the neighbors have changed. It's become a diverse neighborhood with people from
Mhm.
all over the world. So we're going to have to change to make our neighbors comfortable here. They are now a multi-ethnic community church in a diverse neighborhood with 2,000 members.
Wow.
The problem is the pastor, when he preaches to 500 empty seats because they used to be 5,000 members
Mhm.
when all their neighbors look like them. And so the challenge they have is there are people who say, we're shrinking, we're losing it. What we should do is keep more people who look like us and get them to drive in. And he said, no, our value is our neighbor. Our neighborhood has changed, so we need to change. Well, there's people who are like, well, I don't want to be part of a church that looks like that.
Mhm.
And so they leave. So that's the challenge. Like the mountains for him is his neighborhood changed. It's different in different places.
Mhm. Mhm. My personal impression is that Americans are more open to change than Europeans are. So even if you look at people moving around
Yeah.
from one house to another, I have a colleague who said he bought 11 houses in his life, and I think there's not one German who ever sold and bought so often houses. And I think we are tighter there.
Yeah,
This
yeah.
is also your view?
Well, I think at the moment in the United States, there's a fear of the future, and there's a hearkening to go back, and there's a press toward nationalism, and even some of the things our government is doing at the moment, and the Christians are supporting, is concerning to me because I think that it doesn't match up to Scripture. We're not doing a very good job of loving our neighbors and working for justice and welcoming the immigrants. And I mean, we have a lot of conversations led by Christians that feel to me like they're more built on fear than they are on faith and upon the call of God. So maybe that was true in the past. The moment I'm really worried about my
Yeah, maybe a chance for Europe to catch up a bit there.
Yes,
Yeah?
and maybe teach us.
Yeah. When a church is stuck in this process,
Yeah.
what would you recommend them to? Where's a good starting point of getting it going again?
Well, I mean, this may sound like a shameless plug, but I say get help. This is where our company comes in. Get help. Like you don't have to do it by yourself.
Do you have an apartment in Germany already?
Yeah. We have planes. We fly. Yeah. I mean, we have books and we have seminars and we have.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's what I had to find. What I realized was, when they looked at me and said, I said, I don't know why. Why are our numbers going up, our metrics going up, and our morale going down? Didn't know what to do. And so we got help. I brought someone in to coach me and teach me. And we started doing experiments and new things. I think that one of the mistakes we make is that we have to all figure it out by ourselves. And so I would say just acknowledge the truth. Like we've tried everything we can and the world has changed. And we were trained as canoers. We got good arm muscles, but we're not good at hiking. Maybe we could use a guide to take us through the mountains. And then look for that.
If you can tell something to your younger me, would you change anything in your own biography on this way?
That question. You know what I would tell my younger me? I would say, you're kind of a smart guy and it's going to be a problem. It took me a long time to be comfortable not having the answer. I feel like I had to learn it the hard way. I wish I could have told younger me, be a learner, be curious, be okay with asking a dumb question and not looking smart. The sooner you learn that, the faster you'll go and the happier you go. And today I'm much more comfortable, but I'm I'm in my 60s, you know, like I wish I could tell 25-year-old me or 30-year-old me, it's really okay to not have an answer, to ask a dumb question, to be a learner. It would have been better.
Yeah, Tod, very last question, and the question I ask every time in this podcast is if you have one wish you can wish from Christian leaders, what would you wish for?
What I would wish is that you would know in your bones that you are already profoundly loved. You have nothing to prove. So knowing that you are securely loved by God, then take risks. Just step out, learn, go forward. There's nothing to prove. This morning, I was getting ready to speak, and York, who runs, walked up to me and he literally said to me, he said, there's nothing you can do to make this bad. Just be yourself. I'm thinking, I'm 61 and I'm the keynote speaker, and I needed to hear that today. I needed him to say, there's nothing you could do that would make this go wrong. Just go up there and be yourself. We need to hear that over and over and over again. I had to hear it this morning.
Tod, thank you very much for being on this podcast.
Yeah.
It was wonderful.
Thank you. Enjoyed it very much.
Thank you for joining us on the Adlerblick journey. We appreciate every subscription, like, and comment. Follow Adlerblick on Instagram and Facebook, and subscribe to our newsletter at adlerblick.de/newsletter.